Hi, I am Dr. Dara and this is Truth with Dr. Dara and we are live Facebook right here and Instagram down here. So if you have any questions, go ahead and write them in the bottom. Tonight we're going to talk about spring emotional baggage and how to clear that shift out. You know, it is April and what do they say? April showers bring May flowers. And for so many people, there's a lot of emotional baggage that trudges through and people are trying to make physical change, but at the base, at the root, there's these emotional things that are stuck. And when that happens, it's like trying to push a wall. It's like fighting against gravity and it feels really complicated. I see some of you are jumping on Instagram down here and on Facebook. Please put your questions in the bottom. And tonight we're going to talk about emotional baggage. I mean, who doesn't have it? I know I do. It's like somebody said an awesome metaphor that Kirsten did this week, that she feels like she's trudging it all over the country, that she has enough baggage to take with her. Could you imagine if we could get Sky Miles for our emotional baggage? That would be awesome. Hi Iris, I see you down there. James and Amy, you're up above, and I see some others going on here. So if you have any questions, please let me know, share with me. What is your emotional baggage? What are you carrying at the top of your shoulders? First, I want to give a shout out. If anybody likes my shirt, it's from Iris over at Euro's Cheek Boutique, right next to Ellen's. It's kind of fun. This one I did not actually cut myself. It came like this. I paid money for this torn up shirt. I feel like it releases my emotional baggage when I have holes in my shirts and it's fun, right? So emotional baggage, how does it show up for you in your life and what gets stuck? Let's clear that shift out so that you can keep moving forward in the second, I want to say semester, but it's not a semester, the second quarter of the year. The first quarter is down and we're in the second one and we're going and it's strong and it's solid. And how do you get past that? I think the first thing is really noticing where you're at. Like, what are your wins for the first quarter? Because so many times everybody's focusing on what's not working and not paying any attention to what is working. So what has worked for you? What comes to mind for you when you even think of emotional baggage? But when you're thinking about emotional baggage, what are you dragging with you? John Kabat-Zinn, he talks about how by the time you're 30 years old, you're already carrying so much with you. Like it's unheard of not to. I think of it like a big Santa Claus bag. Like everybody has their story and they're just trudging it and bringing it with them. And at the end of the day, I think there's this idea that you're not supposed to have it, which is ludicrous because everybody has a story. So how could you not have emotional baggage or physical baggage or any baggage? It's your story. And there's no perfect story. It's what builds character. It's what builds good stories. It's what people connect about. It's how you live your life. So having that is really critical because just ignoring it and thinking that it's supposed to be perfect is where there's this warped perception. So I wrote some little notes down this week. You gotta love it, on an envelope. My daughter wouldn't let me have her lined paper. But focusing on how far you've come is really, really important in your emotional baggage, because if you're not focusing on what is working, you're just gonna keep working on what's not working. Christine says you'd have to have no memory to not have baggage. Yeah, exactly. You'd be a machine or you'd be a robot. Christine, hi, nice to see you. I'm glad you could jump on. It's really just part of who you are in your story, and the more that we're fighting it, the more that it gets stuck and the more that it builds up. I mean, that's the way that our minds go. If you walk around saying, don't be stressed, don't be stressed, don't be stressed, the more stress you're gonna have. Or the more you talk about, I am so unhappy with something that happened, the more that it's gonna continue to happen. So really the idea, if you want to relinquish some of that emotional baggage, is it just being what it is instead of like trying to fight it. It's just, this is what it is. Here we go. There's this one song and it's, what is it? It's not Belinda Carlisle, but Belinda Carly maybe, and it's called The Story, and I love it because she talks about these are the stories on your face. I am going to spare you from singing this one because it is not pretty if I sing it, but it's about having, you know, these lines on our face, and just part of where we've been, and we would be boring if we didn't have a history or a perfect childhood or perfect relationships. I think it's a strong misconception in our community and our society. You know, even thinking last week, I was asked a question, which is pretty serious, right? The Sun Sentinel called and asked me, and they said, Dr. Dara, what are your thoughts? Do you think we should take down the 1200 building over at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas? Because there's been some back and forthness with whether the building should stay up, and or when it's going to happen in a few years. Like, is this what's triggering post-traumatic stress disorder for so many of these students? And my response is, well, if you can take down the building, but there's still going to be things there. Does that mean you're going to take down the memorials and all the other stuff that's up there reminding people day in and day out? I mean, there's combat veterans that go to war and they have different things that go on, and they can't just remove the situations or the stimulus, and other countries don't respond to things the way that we do. So what if we get the proper treatment, or we get the proper therapy, like rapid resolution therapy, and then people can still just be fine no matter what the conditions are that they can do? That's going to be imperative. So even with that is the idea that there's these thoughts in our heads, and they are what they are, and you can't change it any different than what you're doing. Brian says, Dr. Dara, well done on the show. Well, thank you, Brian. You're the host of the most on your show as well. I've been catching it lately, and it's exciting watching you guys. Brian hosts a show, and it's the United States Tennis Association, which is something that I was a part of. And I see some more of you jumping on. Helene, you just got on, and there's more of you down on Instagram. If you have some comments, please put them in. We're talking about emotional baggage and how to clear that shift out and what's getting stuck for us. So often it's not what's stuck, it's the way that we're thinking about the stuff that's stuck. And the first thing that I suggested was to look at what your strengths are opposed to what's not working. And even if you're talking about an athlete or anybody, a professional, that's what we do. I mean, an athlete comes off the ice and the first thing their coach says to them is all the critiques of what they're doing wrong. And if I could start a big movement among athletics and professionalism and everything that we do, even parenting, before you even mention what's not going right, first focus on what is going right. I was, the other day, I got stuck on something. I come in my house and the first thing I do is I think to myself, oh my gosh, it looks like there's a tornado that's going through my house, and I walk in from work and I'm feeling this sense of heightened alertness, AKA mommy freak out mode, like, oh my gosh, it's such a mess, I have to clean it up. And it dawned on me, I was talking to my aunt actually, and it dawned on me, you know what that means? That means my kids are having a good time. So I'm good with them having a good time. It doesn't mean that they are trying to be destructive. And sometimes that's my emotional baggage of thinking I have to do things better or quicker or sooner than it is. And my emotional baggage really gets a lot around judgment. It's around judgment, like what people are gonna think. I mean, my gosh, Brian, you can attest to this. Getting on these Facebook Lives is definitely a feeling of judgment, just putting yourself out there and doing it and wondering, oh gosh, what are other people gonna say? What are they gonna think? You know, that's a really startling feeling. It makes me feel like I'm on the tennis court again with a fear of like losing. But you know, you just keep getting out there, you keep showing up, and it's gonna get better. And even when I'm doing this all the time, every time I'm like, oh my gosh, and I call it my ugly duckling syndrome. It's like I do something and then afterwards I start freaking out, like, oh my gosh, how was it? What did I do? But if I can still focus on what is working, then I'm gonna draw more energy to that, and then my emotional baggage is gonna get much lighter, because then it doesn't carry any weight. It can't stand on its own. And the other thing is that the ick that's in our brain is not who we are. Oftentimes we think that if we think something, it means it's the truth. You know, just like if somebody says something to us like, oh, you're not nice, does that mean like, oh, that's the truth? No, it just means that there's opinion. They might have woke up on the wrong side of the bed and they're feeling agitated, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you, because at the end of the day, everything is about perception. And it's really about what the perception that's going on that's even happening. You know, some therapists and psychologists, they have these charts up of all these feelings. Well, the way that I see it, there's only 2 feelings. You got it? Everybody can get them. Fear and anger. Primitive. right? Because if an animal is scared because of another animal coming towards it, what's it gonna do? It's gonna get the hell out of there. And in order for it to get out of there, all the blood rushes to the animal's legs so it can be faster than the slowest animal that's going with it, but it's gonna get away from whoever's trying to get them. And that's fear in its best, and we all have that in us. I mean, heck, what color does our face turn when we get scared? White as a ghost, because all the blood is rushing down through our legs. And then the other emotion that I think is imperative is anger. And if somebody's gonna mess with my baby cubs, well, okay, if an animal, if gonna mess with their baby cubs, what are they gonna do? They're gonna try to bite them. They're gonna try to attack them, and all the blood is gonna rush to their mouth. It's the same thing for me. If somebody tries to mess with my baby cubs, all the blood's gonna rush to my mouth, but I can't go biting the the cub that's out there. Like, I can't go biting other people that make me mad. I just have to kind of grin and bear it. I mean, if I go to the bank and the bank teller agitates me, I can't bite it, but it's actually a primitive response that happens. So the reason I bring this up is not only because I love the animal kingdom, apparently, is the idea that fear and anger is what's generating and the perception in our mind. So if you have fear and anger, it's a physiological or an emotional response to perceived threat. So these ideas get caught in our head, and like literally we think that we're gonna die, that it's a perception or it's a threat, and really it's not, but it's just the perception of what's happening. So we're letting our brains know that there's nothing that's to be done. There's no response that's needed. It just is what it is. So oftentimes what happens is we attach that ick as being like it is us. So as we started off talking about our story, and our story is just what we bring along with us, like in that bag with us. The story is like having a scab. My son got a scab on his elbow, and it's so interesting to me because of his perception of it. Like, oh, is it gonna turn colors? What's gonna happen to it? Is it gonna heal? What's it all about? And with that said, it's a scab, right? But in his mind, he wants to know if he's gonna go to sleep and wake up with it being a different color. And that's his story. And sometime he's gonna talk about it. I mean, I have a scar, no joke, right here. I fell off the toilet when I was a kid. True story. I was like 5. I was reaching across and I cracked my head open. That's a story. That's a little embarrassing sharing it with you, but that's a story. And many of you might say, oh, well, I have a scar just like that, or a ridiculous story just like that. And if we could have some humility about the things that happen to us and recognize that they're just the stories and not who we are, then we're gonna be in good shape. There's nothing to do with them. So if you're having a thought, it's a thought. You guys have heard me say this a million times. If I ask you to think of a pink elephant, everybody's got it. Oh, Penny, I see that you're on here, and I wish I had my little pink elephant right at this moment, so pretend like it's right here. Or I have a red elephant behind me. You can see it. If I tell you to think of my red elephant, okay, now I want you to try to not think of the red elephant. You can't do it. It doesn't happen like that. So if you're telling your mind to do something, it doesn't hear the negation. So if you're telling yourself not to think something is true, if in your head you're like, oh, I didn't do that good enough, that becomes emotional baggage because it becomes heavier because all you're thinking about is how you don't want it. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. It'll just fizzle out and sizzle on its own. It doesn't need you to give it any more energy than it already has. So if you guys have any questions or thoughts, tell me, what is your emotional baggage? Put it down below, because it is your story, and it's been probably has some good mileage on it since when you were a kid. It's the perceptions, it's the things that we pick up. I mean, you know, you think of different names for things, like kids go to the bathroom, and what do you call it? And when other people talk about it, I mean, a fart, how many names is there for passing gas? And based on your family, that's what comes to mind. Yes, I just said the word fart, but it's so silly. I laugh at potty humor, but like it's so real as well, and we create these associations around with things. And if you are taught not to say that word, then you're gonna feel so tense every time you hear it, and you're gonna think that there's something wrong with saying it. I have some visitors, my dogs are coming to say hi. So that's the way that our minds work. And the other part of it is like, as you're carrying that bag of goodies, the past is the past. You can't do anything with it. There's nothing to do. You can't clap in the past any more than you can snap in the future. It's not possible. So you couldn't have done it any different than you did it, and you couldn't have done it any gooder. There's no way possible. And I think there's this idea sometimes about what the past is. And at the end of the day, your past is, that's what anxiety is. It's concern about something that happened before or thinking about what may happen in the future. So when that's said, there's nothing that we can do. It is what it is. And I just wonder how much energy would be freed up if it was like, This week I used a new tactic with people, and I don't know if you guys can see it. Hey Breaker, come on over here. Come here. My buddy Breaker, my big greyhound, he got a little fatigued. I took him out running. Crazy day. I was up at 4:30 to go to a chamber meeting in West Palm Beach, and it was just a long day, and I came home and I decided we needed fresh air. So I took the kids and the dogs for a run, and it is Florida here again, and it is so hot, and all I can say is he was panting and overheating. So I don't think he's gonna experience any trauma. He is not gonna have any emotional baggage from this experience. He's just not, because that's not how dogs operate. Like we were talking about last week, they're not gonna think of something that happened in the past. He's only gonna think about things that happen moving ahead. Nothing in the past, only ahead, and what's going on right now in the present moment. Got it? And the other thing is that focus on like the people that you do have. If you wanna relinquish some of that emotional baggage, focusing on what you have, like the strengths that you have with people, is where you're gonna find yourself moving ahead and moving forward and really appreciating what you have. So who's on your team? Who are your people? Who are gonna help you build up those things that you wanna do? I see another dog coming through. That's the fun of doing this in my home studio, is I have lots of interruptions and things happening all at one time. Excuse me 1 minute. All right, so that's what we've got as far as our emotional baggage, how it's building up for us, what it looks like for us. And are you ready for the next part of it? The next part is who you hang out with. Water seeks its own level. And if you're hanging out with people that are grouchy and icky and negative, it is going to pull you down. So leading into that, next week, we're gonna talk about clearing toxic relationships. We're like completely clearing the closet out of spring. Clean house, emotional baggage. The closet next week is gonna be about relationships, and we're gonna get that all clean, and that shift is gonna be straight ahead, making stuff happen. So if you have any questions this week, be sure to DM me or post them. Thoughts around relationships. I wanna know what's the relationships, the toxic relationships that are holding you back, and let's talk about how to move forward in that with them. So this week you're thinking like, hey, how do I get that bag lighter? And the way you're gonna get it lighter is just leaving it alone. There's nothing to do with it. It's old news, just leave it there. So emotional baggage, gone, shifted, inner mind, creating new associations, moving straight ahead. And next week, toxic relationships, gone, done with that. And we're gonna move ahead from there too. Make sure you're in my Facebook group, Truth with Dr. Dara. There's been some really juicy comments going on. A lot of people talked about the idea of guilt still weighing them down. We talked about guilt last week, clearing that out. And the questions, the comments, the emails have all been awesome. So thank you to you guys. Make sure you're getting my newsletter if you haven't already signed up at drdara.com. And I will look forward to hanging out with you guys next week, 8:30 p.m. Thursday nights. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.